So for example, number one, the first thing that it's asking us to do is sketch the angle, negative 175 degrees. So keep in mind, going back to Monday, when we started 6.1, that when it's negative, we rotate clockwise. So the initial side is going to start here. And if it's negative 175, so this is 0 degrees, this is negative 90, this is negative 180, this would be negative 270, and then 0 is also negative 360, and it keeps going around. Okay, but negative 175, so this would be my initial side here, and I would rotate clockwise. It would be almost to negative 180, just not quite. So that is what the angle would look like for negative 175. It's a little smaller than a negative 180 degree. So when you're converting to radians, the conversion, and this is what we covered yesterday, you multiply it by pi over 180. So if I take negative 175 and I multiply that by pi over 180, I get negative 175 pi over 180. Reduce that fraction down. And if we divide it both by 5, top and bottom, the answer in radians, negative 175 degrees converted to radians, is equivalent to 35 pi over 36. So this would be my angle in radians. So that took up a little bit more space than what I thought it would. But let's go ahead and convert our second one, or let's sketch 6 pi over 5. Now, radians, you have to know how to convert it. You have to understand decimals. So you have to, first of all, think if looking at this fraction, 6/5, I know that that is greater than 1, but less than 1.5, okay? So if you were to put that in your calculator, 6 divided by 5, you get 1.2, and 1.2 is greater than 1, but less than 1.5. So when we are sketching a positive angle, this is 0, this is pi over 2, this is pi, this is 3 pi over 2, and then this is 2 pi. Because it's positive, we're going counterclockwise. So I'm going to start here. And 6 pi over 5 would be in quadrant 3. So this would be your angle. Now let's convert that to degrees.
Miss Bryant,
Yes.
I don't understand how it's like right after the pi, or like.
So yeah, so that's pretty confusing because it's a fraction. So in your calculator, maybe it would be helpful if you were to so if you were to think of this, just so you can kind of get familiarized with it. So this is 0.5, and this is 1, this is 1.5, this is 2. So 6 divided by 5, 6 divided by 5 is 1.2. 1.2 is in between 1 and 1.5. So it would fall in this area.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. So with the radians are fractions, and we generally, as a society, not just you, not just high school kids, but we just don't like fractions, and we are more comfortable with decimals. So if you have to convert it to a decimal so you can understand where it falls on the number line, then that's okay. Okay, so now let's go ahead and convert this to degrees. When you do that, you have 6 times 180, and then that's divided by 5. So go ahead, type that in your calculators. Take 6 times 180. So 6 times 180 divided by 5 is 216 degrees. So when you have an angle, you can measure it in different ways. Just like distance can be measured in inches and feet, time can be measured in minutes and seconds and hours. Angles can be measured in degrees and radians. So we have to know how to convert back and forth. I also want to remind, I just sent a message out on Canvas also. All of these lessons are recorded. They're on Canvas. So if you weren't in class Monday or Tuesday, you do need to go back and watch those videos because you have homework due this Friday. There's only 5 homework assignments for the entire month of January in this class. The first one is due Friday, and your quiz is right now on the 14th. Well, whatever next Friday is, I'm not sure what that date is. I think it's January 14th. Okay, so I need to get into the new material. So take a moment and copy this down, and then we will go through it together. Okay, so when you look at a circle, if you go around one time, every time you go around is 360 degrees, okay? However, you can go around the circle more than once. So for this first one, 690, what this means is I rotate it more than one time. So again, this is my initial side. So this rotated around one full time, but then it kept going, okay? So to figure out where it lands, let's go ahead and subtract 360, which represents that first revolution. So in your calculator, if you take 690 and you subtract 360, you get 330 degrees. So coterminal angles are angles that share the same terminal side. So what this is saying is that a 690-degree angle is going to end at the exact same place as a 330-degree angle. So 330 degrees would fall in quadrant 4. So we have our first revolution, and then we go around again, and then we would stop probably somewhere around there. Okay, so let me just redo that, because I think seeing it rotate twice may look a little bit confusing, but just know that when you're graphing a 690-degree angle, that's the exact same thing as a 330-degree angle. If it's more than 360, you're going to subtract 360 until you get an angle in between 0 and 360, and then that way you'll know where it lands. So I'm going to start here, and then I'm rotating around. So this will be 90. This is 180. This is 270. So 330 would be somewhere about right there. we'll say. And that would be your answer for part A. For part B, so this one here, you're going counterclockwise because it is positive. Again, this is going back to Monday's lesson, and that is posted on Canvas. If it's negative, you are rotating clockwise. So we need to get a number between -0, well, not -0, but between 0 and -360. So let's add 360. When it's a negative angle, we're going to add. If it's a positive, we would subtract. So go ahead in your calculators. Take -550 plus 360, and you get -190 degrees. A -190 degree angle is coterminal with a -550. So it's in the same, the terminal side is in the exact same place. So when I graph that, it's negative, so now I'm rotating clockwise. So this is 0. So I'm starting here. And -190 is going to be right around here. That would be your angle. Now, radians are a little bit harder, again, because it's fractions, okay? So if you were to take in your calculator, if you divide 13 by 6, you get a number greater than 2. Remember, 2 pi is the same as 360. So I need to subtract 2 pi. Okay, so in order to subtract 2 pi though, going back to fractions, you would need a common denominator in order to subtract 2 pi. So I am going to multiply this by 6 so I can get a common denominator, because you cannot subtract fractions without a common denominator. So we have 13 pi over 6 minus 12 pi over 6, which gives you just 1 pi over 6. So that is my angle. So I'm going to graph 1 pi over 6. So when I graph 1 pi over 6, 1 pi over 6, so again, keeping with what we talked about, we're counting to 2, but we're going by 1/2. So we have 0.5 here. This is 1. Well, so we have 0, we have pi over 2, which is 0.5. And then we have pi. And then we have 3 pi over 2. And then we have 2 pi. So we need to figure out, if you take 1 and divide it by 6, where does that fall? Is 1 divided by 6? We know it's greater than 0, but is it more than 0.5? So 1 divided by 6 is approximately 0.17. So that tells me that it's somewhere in the first quadrant. So this is my initial side, and pi over 6 is going to be somewhere here. That would be my angle. Okay, and so for our last one, we're going to add 2 pi. But when we're adding 2 pi, I need a common denominator. So I'm really adding 10 pi over 5 because 10 divided by 5 is 2. But again, I need to write it in such a way that I have a common denominator. And that's why I wrote it as 10 over 5. So when you add that, you get negative 4 pi over 5. So these two angles are coterminal. So we're going to rotate clockwise. So again, we have our 0 here, and then this would be our negative pi over 2. And then this is negative pi, and negative 3 pi over 2, and then negative 2 pi. So take 4 divided by 5 and tell me in the chat which quadrant you think that's going to fall in. So it's 4 divided by 5. Is that greater than a half? So what is 4 divided by 5? So we're going to rotate clockwise. Yes, 0.8. Okay, good. So 0.8, we know it's not in here because this stops at 0.5. This is 1. So when we are doing our quadrants, this is quadrant 1, this is quadrant 2, this is quadrant 3, this is quadrant 4. 0.8 though is past quadrant 4 because quadrant 4 stops at 0.5. Then we get into quadrant 3, but we don't go past quadrant 3 because this here would be the 1. So we are going to be in quadrant 3. So this is my terminal side here. My initial side, and then it's going to end about right there. That would be your angle. Yes, so it would be quadrant 3. Correct. Again, radians, they're generally just a little bit more tricky just because it's a fraction. We don't go around saying that we need, we don't say 1.5. Or if we say 3 over 2, in our mind, we know that we don't necessarily correlate that to 1.5. So it's going to take some practice, but we will definitely get there. All right, so our last thing we're going to do for today, and I'll give you a chance to copy down this example, is we're going to take each one of these angles and find one angle that is coterminal. We're going to name one that is positive and one that is negative. So take a moment, copy down this last slide, and then we will come back together shortly. Okay, so in order to find an angle that is positive and negative, if it's in degrees, if the angle is in degrees, we're going to add and subtract 360. So our first two, they're in degrees. We have our degree symbol. So we're going to find a positive angle. I want you to take 50 plus 360. And then you're going to do the same thing and take 50 minus 360 to get your positive and your negative. So go ahead and do that in your calculators. So these three angles are all there. They all have the exact same terminal place. So the angles are at 50, 410. All of these are exactly the same. They all share a terminal side. So let's look at question B. Again, that is in degrees. So we're going to take 165 plus 360 and 165 minus 360. Go ahead and type those in your calculator, see what you get. Okay, so when you take the 165 plus 360, you get 525 degrees. And then if you take 165 minus 360, you get negative 195 degrees. So you have your positive angle and your negative coterminal angle. Okay, when it's in radians, we're going to add and subtract 2 pi. Now for this first one, because it is my denominator is 5, we want to write that 2 pi as 10 pi over 5 because 10 pi over 5 is the same thing as 2 pi. And in order to add a fraction, add a number to a fraction, we need to write that whole number with a common denominator. So this 8 pi over 5, I'm going to add 10 pi over 5. And then I'm also going to subtract 10 pi over 5. Remember, again, 2 pi is the equivalent of 360 degrees. 10 pi over 5 is 2 pi. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So we're going to add and subtract. And because we have our common denominator, 8 pi plus 10 pi is 18 pi. 8 pi minus 10 pi is negative 2 pi. So for our last example, go ahead and try to work through part D. So for our last example, we have 5 pi over 4. So I need a common denominator. So I'm going to write this as 8 pi over 4 because 8 divided by 4 is 2. When I add it, 5 pi plus 8 pi, I get 13 pi. And when I subtract it, 5 pi minus 8 pi, I get negative 3 pi. And that would be my two answers. Okay. So this is just a screenshot of what is posted on our Canvas page as far as our assignments and due dates. We are officially finished with 6.1. So you can start working on this first homework assignment. There's only 5 assignments due for the entire month of January, sorry. I'm trying to push us to February. There's only 5 assignments for January. These are the due dates for those assignments. The first one is a Canvas assignment. So you click on that link, you get 3 attempts at it. I recommend that you do your first attempt today. And that way, if you have questions, you can bring them to class tomorrow. Have a great day. If you don't have any other questions, I will see you tomorrow.